Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge, Week 7 waiver wire. Wow, craziness. The league, the season is absolutely flying by, and so it's time, man. We gotta make some pushes if our teams are doing bad. I just had like a historically rough week across two teams. I still might get a victory because one of them just kind of leaked by against an opponent that's weaker. So we'll see what happens tonight. But enough of that. Waiver wire stuff. Couple of boilerplate items here. Monday Night Football has not happened yet, so as of recording this video, any significant additions, changes due to Monday Night Football will be captured in the comments section. You can also find this sheet up on my website, www.theFFforge.com. There's a link down in the description to that, and also up on the website throughout the week by Wednesday evening, usually sometime Wednesday afternoon. I will have all of the rankings for every position up on the website in the rankings section on the website, of course. And you can also see me talk a little bit more about those rankings in videos that come out throughout the week if you're not familiar, if you're newer to the channel. And rankings get updated throughout the week as always. That's why I go live for any start-sit questions, trade questions, etc. 3 times throughout the rest of the week once I get done with all this ranking stuff. So Thursday, 2 hours prior to kickoff for Thursday Night Football, I'll be available here. On Saturday evenings, I'll be available until, quite late. We went 4.5 hours, it was, this past Saturday. So that was a great success. Welcome. Thank you, everybody who came. Welcome, new people. And that's, I start at 6:30 and kind of go until I go. And then Sunday mornings, 2 hours prior to kickoff, I'm live yet again for any of those last-second questions and to keep up on the news, any kind of reports that come out, etc. With that said, lots of injuries this year, so hopefully you've been looking at the screen, maybe looked up your players, seen what's kind of the likelihood here of them coming back this week, or how long am I expected to be without them. Once again, you can look closer at this, but we also, up on the website, to look closer at it, we also have a bunch of new injuries, and injury news is still funneling in today, but we have a pretty good idea for a lot of these of, where the recovery process is at. So here's our list of new additions from throughout last week to, game time injuries. Quite a few of them, quite a few hamstrings. This was the week of hamstrings. This tends to happen a couple times a year where you see, even more than a couple times. I mean, you'll just see a rash of a certain type of injury. And, this was the week of hamstrings to some extent here. Jerome Ford, Dallas Goedert, Tyjae Spears, Travis Etienne, all with hamstring injuries. Typically, expect them to miss like 2 weeks at least, and quite possibly more. We know that these things can go on for a long time. They're fickle injuries, and this year, sometimes we might see some of these players go on IR. It seems like that's something that teams have been doing this year. Other than that, Quentin Johnson, ankle injury, Dontavian Wicks, shoulder injury, both week to week. Guys, we don't really have a good sense right now of the expected time that they might be missing. Brian Robinson Jr., for now, I'm kind of assuming day-to-day on that one. Ramondre Stevenson, Rashad White, both with foot injuries. Don't really have a good handle on those. Jacoby Myers, ankle injury. Assuming it's like a sprain, expect him to be out for at least one more week here. Zamir White, groin injury, I already accounted for 1 week missed on this one since that was kind of an earlier on the week thing. Expect 0 to 2 weeks depending on the seriousness of the injury. That always matters for all of these injuries, and it could be longer if it's more serious, but I think they would have put him on IR if it was more serious than this. Jordan Mason, AAC joint injury in game. He's considered day-to-day right now, so that is good for his prospects of potentially playing this week. And concussions, usually guys are going to miss 1 week from a concussion. Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., both of them getting a concussion, expecting them to miss this upcoming week. That's going to bring us on to the waiver wire quarterbacks for week 7. We've got Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence here. Jared Goff, overall, a nice schedule even going into the future here. Green Bay, Houston, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, all part of that long-term schedule there. And really Tennessee in a couple of weeks, the one like real down point. Otherwise it's average to above average to good, really, for Jared Goff rest of the next 6 weeks. For Sam Darnold, the next 4 weeks looking really juicy there. Detroit, Los Angeles Rams, Indianapolis, Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, definitely on the lower end of this spectrum here. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, I mean, take your pick. And then for Trevor Lawrence here, you can see nice long-term schedule here. New England, Green Bay, Philly, Minnesota, Detroit, a bye week, Houston after that. So not too shabby for Trevor Lawrence. A lot of opportunities for him to have bigger weeks there. And I do have a few honorable mentions as well here. Drake May, going to have Jacksonville this upcoming week. So he is somebody you could play in a pinch if you wanted to. He did have a good first week fantasy-wise. I don't, it's a really good matchup. So because of that, I am willing to play him in a pinch. Justin Herbert, going to be going up against Arizona. Not really a big fan of Justin Herbert's fantasy value in general in this offense, but it is a good matchup there against Arizona. And Tua Tagovailoa is somebody you could start to grab and put on a bench. I don't know that you need to do that this early, as he's not coming back this upcoming week. We know that. But Miami has come out and said that although they expect Tua to play football again this year in 2024, the time frame they're not so sure of. It very well could be in 2 weeks, though. So if you want to prepare ahead for that, go right ahead. But I think that's going to be something we're not going to find out. I'm guessing maybe they're playing a little bit of gamesmanship. Maybe they do have a good idea that he might be coming back in a couple of weeks. And they just, once again, want to play some gamesmanship. We'll see. Let's bring us on to the running back position. We've got Tyrone Tracy at the top of the list, going up against Philadelphia this coming week. This is really just a long-term pick. If you need more short-term value, I think some of these other options, and I have a couple of honorable mentions here, might be, a better choice for you. But I spoke about it preseason. In terms of Tyrone Tracy, first of all, for fantasy value, just his skill set, it is really valuable. He has, he brings, a receiving upside that a lot of running backs don't have to the game, to his fantasy profile. So that's really fantastic. And I do not think that Devin Singletary is such a good running back that they couldn't decide to start Tyrone Tracy over him. And I still think that that's possible. I only put 1 week here because that's about the maximum before I think Singletary is returning. And then we're going to be in a purgatory probably of wondering if Tyrone Tracy has any value going forward or what that value is, whatnot. So there's some risks with it, but I do really like the upside. And that upside that I like comes in part because of the offenses that these guys are on, some of these other options this week that they're on, and how untrustworthy I think those situations are. So Tank Bigsby might be able to get him for the long term. I mean, he's definitely should be owned. There was a bit of a spike in ownership last week, but still less than 50% owned on ESPN. That's one of the other things here. I only put people on this list if they're less than 50% owned on ESPN's fantasy app. So for Tank Bigsby, it's a really good matchup here, and then some average matchups. But I struggle to trust that Jacksonville offense too much. If he's going to get the bulk of the workload, though, he should definitely be on rosters and will be quite usable this upcoming week. I do have concerns about him busting. Same with Alexander Mattison in a really good matchup for running backs against the Los Angeles Rams next week. Coming off of a good week, so he is an option there for, especially if you're in need of playing somebody this upcoming week with all these injuries that we are dealing with. Ty Chandler, maybe in the best offensive system right now. I don't think that's really a maybe. He's on the best offense here, but a really, really tough matchup against Detroit. Hopefully some receiving work can help him out, but I'm, skeptical, nervous about starting him. I really don't know exactly where he's going to end up lying in my rankings against these guys. My assumption is it'd be pretty close between Alexander Mattison and him. I'm thinking I'll go Alexander Mattison, but in the long term, too, for Ty Chandler, I assume that we can think that there's a decent chance that Aaron Rodgers might miss 2 weeks, so that's how far we're going to look ahead here. That going up against the Los Angeles Rams in a couple weeks for Ty Chandler is something that, especially if you don't need him this upcoming week, that's something to get. That's definitely something to look forward to in a couple of weeks. Outside of these four, some names to think about deeper league. Jaylen Warren for long term. This week's usage, I wouldn't look at that too much, but I am a little less excited about it given that Najee Harris did look good. Then again, it was a really good matchup, so maybe he'll go back to looking like dirt and give Jaylen Warren an opportunity, who I think is a better match for this offensive system. So there is an opportunity there long term. And then Isaac Rendo could be higher on this list with the injury to Mason. However, going up against Kansas City this upcoming week, and so the one opportunity where we might get him, that's not even a guarantee. Kansas City won the single worst matchup for running backs currently for fantasy football purposes. I would rather avoid that in general. And so there you go. In a couple of weeks, though, Dallas, but that's really an outside chance that he'll be usable in that game. That brings us on to the wide receiver waiver wire options, and I have Juju Smith-Schuster at the top of this list, and then it really starts to, like, it's a clear top of this list for me in terms of Juju, just because, you get the best quarterback in the league passing to him currently in the NFL. You have one of the best historical coaches of all time coaching for that offensive system. We know what the upside is. We've seen Juju in this offense do well and fare well for fantasy purposes. You're not getting a wide receiver 1 upside with Juju Smith-Schuster, but could you get a very solid wide receiver 2 rest of season out of him? Definitely. So Juju Smith-Schuster should be owned in all leagues, and there is a chance of him absolutely busting, and what we saw in his first opportunity being nothing, just due to all of his injuries and everything. But I thought it was very promising how efficient he was with his receptions as well. So, yeah, I'm all about taking a chance on that. Then we got Josh Downs. The bigger concern here is the change of quarterback upcoming with Anthony Richardson coming back and how that might impact him on a week in and week out basis, how trustworthy he might be. But the other options aren't really that trustworthy either. Christian Watson, there is, that wide receiver 1 type of upside in fantasy football within Christian Watson, ability wise, but between injuries and everything, and just the vast array of weapons in that offense, it's really not something that we are expecting at this point. But he came back, he had a nice week, in part due to one big play, so I'm not getting too excited about this, but Christian Watson still offers some great upside, somebody to put on the back end of your roster, and just see what happens. Same with Romeo Doubs, right in that same boat, but I think maybe even a little less trustworthy, but a little more trustworthy, but a little less upside to him. And then Demario Douglas is a name that I would say could easily make the list here too, if I was making a bigger list. So there's somebody that, I thought it would, and it still might be, Jalen Polk would be the guy that has the most potentially to gain from change at quarterback to Drake May. But there seemed to be a connection there between him and Demario Douglas as well. So let's, take a chance on seeing that through for another week too. It's definitely worth it. That's bringing us on to the tight ends. And there's basically no tight ends to go out and get this week on the waiver wire. However, there is somebody who I've been talking about all off season, all the way till today. Just barely been making these lists due to some of the underlying signs showing that he can have some bigger games. And he did. He had 9.3 fantasy points. That's plenty good this last week in half PPR. And so it came through well enough. So I just want to point him out. It's not like he's a must grab, but I do think that he's better than what some people are holding on the back end of their rosters. And that's going to bring us on to the DST streaming options this week. And at the top of the list by far are the Buffalo Bills. You got Tennessee coming in town or wherever. They're playing against Tennessee, and that is one of the best options for DSTs to be going up against. They like to turn the ball over, and that works for fantasy points. And then the New Orleans Saints going up against Denver. Obviously some upside to that for one of the better fantasy defenses. And the Los Angeles Chargers not too far behind them in terms of being like a number 1 fantasy DST going up against Arizona, probably without Marvin Harrison Jr., so there's some upside there as well. And that is going to be it for this week's waiver wire video. Take care. Thank you very, very much. Look forward to videos coming out throughout the week with my rankings, or just come visit me live where I'll have updated rankings as well. Peace out.